This best-selling book from the author of The Laws of Human Nature is amoral, smart, cruel, and instructive. It has sold more than 1 million copies and is the definitive guide for anyone who wants to gain, observe, or fight against ultimate control. People magazine called the book beguiling and fascinating. It was written by Robert Greene and Joost, who used the ideas of Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, and Carl Von Clausewitz, as well as the lives of people like Henry Kissinger and P.T. Barnum, to boil down 3,000 years of the history of power into 48 essential laws. Some laws teach you to be wise. Law 1, never outshine the master. Others teach you to be confident. Law 28, enter action with boldness. And many teach you to protect yourself at all costs. Law 15, crush your enemy totally. But all laws have one thing in common. They all want to rule over everyone. The 48 Laws of Power comes in a bold and eye-catching 2-color package. This book is great if you want to win, protect yourself, or just learn the rules of the game. Robert Greene's book, The 48 Laws of Power, is about the rules of power and how to get and keep it. There are 48 parts in the book, and each one is about a different law of power. Chapter 1, Never Outshine the Master. This chapter talks about how to avoid jealousy and anger by not being better than your boss. Greene gives examples of people in history who lost their power because they made their bosses feel unsafe. Chapter 2, Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. This chapter tells you why it's important to be careful of friends and partners who might turn against you and how to use your enemies to get more power and influence. Chapter 3, Conceal your intentions. Greene talks about how important it is to keep your plans secret so that you can keep the element of surprise and keep other people from messing with your plans. Chapter 4, Always say less than necessary. This chapter talks about the power of silence and why it's important to say a few well-chosen words so you don't give away too much information or look weak. Chapter 5, So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Greene talks about how reputation is important for getting and keeping power, and he gives advice on how to build and protect one's image. Chapter 6, Court attention at all costs. This chapter talks about how important it is to stand out and get noticed if you want to get power and influence. Chapter 7, Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. Greene shows how to gain power and influence by giving other people jobs and taking credit for their work. Chapter 8, Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. This chapter talks about the power of attraction and how to use it to bring people to you so you can get more power and influence. Chapter 9, Win through your actions, never through argument. Greene says that if you want to get more power and influence, you should do things instead of fighting. Chapter 10, Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. This chapter talks about how negativity can spread and how to keep from being brought down by unhappy or bad people. Chapter 11, Learn to keep people dependent on you. Greene explains how to create dependency in others in order to gain power and influence. Chapter 12, Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. This chapter looks at how being honest and giving to your enemies can help you gain power and influence. Chapter 13, When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest. Greene shows how to get people to help you by appealing to their own self-interest. This can help you gain power and influence. Chapter 14, Pose as a friend, work as a spy. This chapter talks about the power of lying and how to use it to find out things and get what you want. Chapter 15, Crush your enemy totally. Greene explains the importance of avoiding one's enemies completely in order to prevent them from coming back to haunt you. Chapter 16, Use absence to increase respect and honor. This chapter talks about the power of silence and how to use it to gain more honor and respect. Chapter 17, Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Greene talks about the power of being unpredictable and how to use it to keep other people off balance and improve one's power and influence. Chapter 18, Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. This chapter talks about the dangers of being alone and how important it is to make friends if you want to get and keep power. Chapter 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. Greene talks about how important it is to know your enemies and not upset the wrong person to avoid getting back at you. Chapter 20. Do not commit to anyone. This chapter talks about the power of being flexible and how to avoid making promises to anyone so that you can change your mind and go after different chances. Chapter 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. Greene talks about the power of lying and how to use it to get ahead of other people. Chapter 22. Use the surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. This chapter talks about the power of giving up and how to use it to get ahead of your opponents. Chapter 23. Concentrate your forces. Greene talks about how important it is to focus your resources and efforts to have the most effect and gain power and influence. Chapter 24. Play the perfect courtier. This chapter talks about the power of flattery and how to use it to get what you want. Chapter 25. Recreate yourself. Greene talks about the power of reinventing yourself and how you can use it to get more power and influence. Chapter 26. Keep your hands clean. This chapter talks about how important it is to stay away from dirty or questionable activities if you want to keep your image and power. Chapter 27. Plan people have to believe in something for them to follow it like a cult. This chapter talks about the power of belief and how to use it to gain power and influence by making a group of people follow you like a cult. Chapter 28. Enter action with boldness. Greene talks about how important it is to be brave and bold when taking action and making the most of chances if you want to get more power and influence. Chapter 29. Plan all the way to the end. This chapter talks about the power of planning and how to make a long-term plan to reach your goals, gain power and influence, and reach your goals. Chapter 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Greene talks about how important it is to make your accomplishments look easy in order to build your image and power. Chapter 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. This chapter talks about the power of control and how to change other people's choices to gain power and influence. Chapter 32. Play to people's fantasies. Greene shows how to use people's dreams and wants to get power and control over them. Chapter 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. This chapter talks about how to find people's flaws and use them to get more power and influence. Chapter 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. Greene talks about the power of putting on a royal image and how to use it to get power and influence. Chapter 35. Master the art of timing. This chapter talks about the importance of time and how to use it to get ahead of other people. Chapter 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. Greene refers to how important it is to ignore things you can't get if you want to keep your power and influence. Chapter 37. Create compelling spectacles. This chapter talks about the power of the show and how to use it to get people's attention and have an effect on them. Chapter 38. Think as you like but behave like others. Greene talks about how important it is to follow social rules and standards if you want to be accepted and have power. Chapter 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. This chapter talks about the power of chaos and how to use it to get more power and influence. Chapter 40. Despise the free lunch. Greene talks about how important it is to work hard and earn your benefits if you want to keep your power and influence. Chapter 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. This chapter talks about how it can be dangerous to try to replace a great leader and how to avoid the problems that can come with succession. Chapter 42. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Greene says that going after the group's boss is a good way to weaken the group and get more power and influence for yourself. Chapter 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. This chapter talks about how to use the power of persuasion to get more power and influence. Chapter 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. Greene shows how to use the mirror effect to disarm and anger opponents in order to gain power and influence. Chapter 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. This chapter talks about change's power and how to use it to get more power and impact without making too much trouble. Chapter 46. Never appear too perfect. Greene talks about the power of being flawed and how to use it to seem more likable, gain power, and have more influence. Chapter 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. This chapter talks about the dangers of going too far and how to know when to stop to keep your power and influence. Chapter 48. Assume formlessness. Greene talks about the power of flexibility and how to use it to stay powerful and not become predictable. Thanks for watching our Amazon book review. If you found our review helpful and you're interested in checking it out for yourself, we've included a link to it in the description below. By clicking on that link, you'll not only get more details about it on Amazon, but also support our channel at no cost to you. So go ahead and click that link to grab your copy of the book and dive into an exciting reading journey. Happy reading, and thanks for your support.